Gente, é o seguinte, hoje a gente vai fazer uma torta de caqui. Claro que a gente vai estar passando tudo em inglês, né, para as crianças de repente prestarem atenção, curtirem junto com a gente e aprenderem um pouquinho de algumas outras coisas em inglês, né? A nossa chefe de hoje não vou ser eu, Teacher Laura, vai ser a Emily, né? Ela vai estar fazendo a receita, lembrando que ela vai estar usando a receita americana, ou seja, as quantidades vão ser traduzidas para medidas em inglês, certo? Mas vocês vão poder ver e acompanhar e aí nisso vocês vão conseguir entender. Depois a gente vai colocar nas mensagens a receitinha em inglês, né, para que vocês possam acompanhar. Então vamos lá, a gente vai começar essa aventura hoje, vamos testar e vamos ver se vocês gostam.
Hi guys, it's me, Emily. A lot of you might know me from Teacher Laura's class. I'm one of her assistants. And if you don't, and if you're a parent, oi, bom dia, boa tarde. And today we're going to be cooking a persimmon pie. And a persimmon is a fruit that you probably already know, just not by its name in English. It's a kaki. But before we start, we need to be aware of the American imperial system. So instead of using grams and milliliters and the metric system, which is what's used in Brazil and most of the world, we're going to use the imperial system. So come here. So instead of grams for the most part, we use cups and different amounts of cups. So here we've got 1 cup, half a cup, 1/3 cup, and 1/4 cup. And then for smaller quantities, we use different spoons. So a tablespoon, which is this one, and then half a tablespoon, and then we also use the teaspoon and half a teaspoon. All right, guys, so first we're gonna add 2 cups and a half of flour. So here's 1 cup of flour, the second cup of flour, and here's half a cup of flour. Next, we're gonna use 1 teaspoon of salt. That was already pre-measured. And 1 tablespoon, that's the big spoon, of sugar. And we're gonna whisk all of the dry ingredients before we add any wet ones. Until it seems more or less evenly combined. Alright guys, now we're gonna add 1 cup of butter, but specifically the butter is gonna have to be cut into little cubes. You can ask a parent to help you do this, and you should. Alright, so we're gonna drop it in there. Spread it a little bit. And then with a fork, you're gonna sort of mix it with the flour and mash the butter slightly. Remember, choose a fork. This won't work with a spoon. The colder your butter is, the better this will work. So I recommend putting the butter in the freezer for maybe a couple minutes before. Especially right after you cut it, because usually when you cut it, it ends up heating up a little bit. Alright guys, so once all the big chunks have reduced in size, and the flour seems to have gotten this sort of yellowish tone, then that means the butter is well incorporated. We can stop doing that with the fork, and we can go to the next step. So you're gonna wanna take a cup of water from the fridge, put it in the freezer for a couple minutes, not enough so that it freezes and turns into ice, but just enough so that it gets really cold. Then you're gonna grab a tablespoon, and you're gonna put 4 tablespoons in here. And then grab a spatula or similar and sort of mix and incorporate the water into the mass. You can see it will start to actually clump together, and now it's actually looking a little bit more like what you imagine dough looks like. It's pretty well incorporated, but I think I'm gonna need a little bit more water. The recipe isn't specific as exactly how much water you should use. It's basically just add until it looks good. So I'm gonna use 1 more, and then keep mixing. And if it starts to feel like the dough is fighting with you, that's a good sign. I'm gonna add one more. You don't want to use more than 8 in total, but you can go from 4 to 8, anything in between is fine. You really don't want to grab this with your hands, because if you grab it, you're gonna warm up the butter more and the water, and that's really gonna mess with the consistency of the crust. Here's Teacher Laura mixing, or helping me mix. Right. So when the dough has sort of all come together, you're gonna wanna stop what you're doing and then put it on some sort of counter or wherever. Make it into a sort of ball as best as you can, but remember to not touch it too much, because again, you're heating up the butter. You're gonna wanna separate the ball in two. And then flatten it a little bit. And you're gonna put each ball in a plate or wherever, wrap it in plastic, or put something over it and put it in the fridge for at least 1 hour. We're gonna leave it in the fridge for about 2 hours, but you can leave it in the fridge for up to 2 days for the crust to really become crumbly. All right, guys, now we're gonna put it in the fridge. And we'll see you later. All right, guys. And then, as one of the things that we're gonna put in the pie filling, you're gonna wanna get a little bit of gengibre, and you're gonna wanna grate it so that you have ground ginger. All right? All right, guys. So I finished grinding all the ginger. Here it is, the result. You're gonna want about this quantity. It can be slightly more, slightly less. And then we've also, ahead of time, peeled the persimmons, or kakis, and the apples. I'm sure everyone knows what apple is. All right, and now we're gonna cut them into fairly small pieces, about that. All of them and all of the apples.
One eternity later.
All right, guys, so next, we're gonna prepare all of the dry ingredients that are gonna go in the pie filling. So we have 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. This was store-bought. 3 tablespoons of white sugar. It's a lot of sugar. And then we're gonna have 3 more tablespoons of sugar, but it's gonna be brown sugar. That can be mascavo or vermelho. Doesn't make a difference. All right, and then mix all of these together. Really nice cinnamon sugary smell, as expected.
Smells good from here.
And then okay. So we've sliced all of the apples and of the persimmons, and we put it in here. And then we're gonna put all of the dry stuff. And you might remember the ginger that we made a little while ago. Hold on. And now we're just gonna mix it all. Last step, before we put this in the fridge, is we're gonna juice this lemon. We're gonna get all the juice and we're gonna add to that mixture. So we'll see you in a sort of strainer here to catch all the seeds. You don't wanna have any seeds in your pie. You can also use orange juice if you have an orange laying around. I prefer lemon. I think it gives it a little bit better of a taste, but it's up to you guys. All right, guys, so it's been a little bit over 2 hours, and now it's time to take out the dough and roll it out. So we transferred it into these little baggies. So the first step to rolling out dough is getting some flour, which we have over here, and putting some on your work surface. Don't be afraid to use your hands. And then we're gonna take the dough out of this little bag. Place it. Put some more flour on top of it. And put some flour on whatever you're using to actually roll it. We don't have a rolling pin, so we're actually using a bottle of And then you're gonna wanna let it sit, the dough out in room temperature for about 5 to 10 minutes, just so that it's not as tough as it normally would be. And then you just want to start and roll it. This requires quite a lot of strength. Alright guys, so as we started to roll out, it sort of formed a very strange shape. So we cut it into a rectangle, and then we're grabbing the extras that we cut and we're putting it on top, and we're gonna keep rolling it. If you're putting this in a circular pan, then obviously you're gonna want a circle. We're putting it in a rectangular one, so we want a rectangle. Alright, let's get rolling. We finished rolling the dough out, and we've placed it in the place where it's gonna cook. And now what you're gonna do is sort of a little bit of surgery. So if there's any places that are missing a little bit of dough or have extra, you can just rip it and put it. So for example, here there's a little bit too much, so I can put it over here where it's a little bit lacking. And so on. You don't want to do it too much, you don't want to mess with the dough a lot, but you can do it just enough so that it's going to look a little bit more aesthetic later on. Alright, so now we're going to fold the edges. So the main way you do this is just you put your finger here and then you hold it out here. Make sure you not rip it. So we've made a couple more surgeries. Alright, and now let's get to folding the edges. There's many ways to do this. This is just one of the ways. Alright guys, now that we're finished molding it, we're gonna put it back in the refrigerator. And while that's happening, you're gonna want to grab the mixture of fruits that are gonna go into the filling. Alright, so for the filling, we're gonna have to cook the liquid that's in it a little bit. But for that, we're gonna have to strain the liquid to separate all the fruit, the solids, and the liquids. So we're gonna put the strainer here, grab our filling, and gently pour it. And then, using a spoon, we can make the process a little bit faster. Just gently tap it so that it all strains. Alright, so now we finished straining it, and here we've got all the liquid, here we've got the fruits. Let's set the fruits aside for a minute. And let's grab this, and we're going to put it over a low heat for, it's not a specific set amount of time, it's about 10 minutes, but really it's just the amount of time that it takes for this very liquidy mixture here to become more like a syrup, very viscous. All right. Alright guys, so while that's simmering over there, you do want to stir occasionally, but not all the time, so I'm going to let it go a little bit by itself. I'm going to start rolling out the top of the pie. Now, rolling out this part isn't as specific as the other one, because the top of the pie can sort of be whatever you want. You can do whatever piece of art you want. Actually, I'm going to leave it up to Catherine, Nini, as many of you know her, to figure out how she wants to do the top of the pie. But this is all up to you. You can do one big pie crust with a couple holes. You can sort of twist. It's really, this is the most creative part. Alright guys, so now it looks like the paste has sort of gotten a very syrupy consistency, as you can see here. It falls very slowly. That means it's pretty much done. So we're going to leave it aside, let it cool off for a minute. And while that's happening, we're going to take our pie here from the fridge. And we're gonna put our fruits in there. Alright, so you wanna make sure that it's all evenly spread. You don't wanna have a mountain full of fruit and then a valley without any. Alright, so to make the cooling process a little bit faster, I'm gonna put this in the freezer. Oh, alright guys, so it looks like the filling is about ready. It's still warm, but it's just not boiling. Alright. Alright guys, and now we're just gonna, like, once again, just even it out a little bit. You don't want to mix it too much. You don't want this getting too far into the bottom of the pie, but you do want it to be even. You want every single forkful of this pie to have a little bit of this wonderful, wonderful syrup. Okay, so we've rolled out the top of the pie and we've also done the little decorations. You want to make sure that at least some of the decorations are open. You want the pie to be able to breathe. Not all of them, but some of them have to be open. They have to be a full cut. Gently peel that off. That's why the flour is important. And we're going to lay it on top. And then it's the same process as earlier. Take from where there's too much. Just redefining a little bit of the borders where it was affected by the top. And now, to fully seal it, we're going to use a fork and we're just going to lightly press it. Alright, and now to finish it off, I'm just getting a fork and I'm pressing the top onto the bottom. Alright guys, this part is a little bit optional. If you're not a big fan of eggs, you can jump it. But if you're not, if you have no problems with them, or you can just tolerate them, then go ahead. So for this step, we're gonna grab a little bit of egg wash. That's just beaten egg. And then we're gonna dabble a little bit in one of these little pencils. A fork will also work if you don't have them. And then you're just gonna sort of lightly brush it. You don't wanna put too much, just a little bit. This is just gonna give a little bit of a golden, shiny texture when it all cooks. Guys, so for the pie not to bake a little bit too quickly, we're gonna put it on top of this. But before we put it on top of this, we also put a small page of aluminum foil on top. So I'm gonna grab some aluminum foil and I'm gonna cut it. Doesn't have to be perfect by any means. Just there. And then we're gonna put the pie on top. Alright guys, so we have to make sure to preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is equivalent to 175 degrees Celsius, roughly. So our oven has been preheated. It's toasty warm in there. So we're ready to put our pie in there. So we're gonna leave the pie in the oven for 35 to 40 minutes. It might take a little bit longer, a little bit less, depending on your oven. Alright guys, so I've taken the pie out of the oven. It's been about 1 hour. It took a little bit extra because our oven is a little bit slow. And here it is. Here's the result. Now you're gonna want to wait about an hour before you cut into this. It's very hot. And that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.